No signal, no code, no crew. The tactical officer's announcement sliced through the deck like metal shearing under silent pressure. His words didn't tremble, but the men behind the console monitors exchanged glances. Something about the approaching vessel, the way it moved, how it refused to acknowledge even basic communication pings, didn't resemble protocol, not even close. Counselor Cor Valen, stationed at Command Level 7, aboard the Cordonis Spire, didn't immediately respond. His eyes remained fixed on the ship's slow advance as it glided toward Docking Bay 7. Smooth, too smooth. Like an object falling without air to break its descent, whatever had happened on that mission had rewritten expectations. He flicked the side of the display, shifting overlays, absorbing telemetry, noting the atmospheric drag residue curving against the hull. Override lockdown, allow it through, maintain full chamber sterilization, and isolate air transfer. A soft mechanical groan marked the magnetic clamps disengaging. No alarms followed. The recon vessel, Saren Trinex, dispatched 17 Earth days prior for a final observational survey, moved into place without resistance. Its velocity dropped to zero like a thought cut short. Inside the observation chamber, a containment detail stood poised, neither at rest nor in combat readiness. Their weapons remained holstered, but fingers flexed instinctively near triggers. The doors groaned open with a sound more biological than engineered, an exhausted exhale from something that should have been dead. Then footfalls. 24 armored boots waited in silence as a singular rhythm echoed into the chamber, measured, mechanical, unmistakably deliberate. It wasn't a rescue. It wasn't even a retreat. This was the walk of something that had seen too much and returned only because there had been nowhere left to go. Varen Deck emerged, stride unbroken, each step releasing a trace of carbon scarring beneath his boots. The atmospheric grime layered across his armor resembled thermal bloom, not from battle, but sustained exposure, an environment too disjointed to define. His chest plate hung open on one side, internal circuitry blinked behind the crack, confused, sputtering, trying to reset itself. He wore no helmet. His face was visible, expression locked into something unreadable, not blank, not shell-shocked, just wrong. Skin mottled, not from radiation burns, but from prolonged inconsistency in temperature regulation. A line of dried residue streaked beneath one eye, as if his own sweat had turned caustic midway down his cheek. Deck's left hand cradled an object, plastic, yellow, synthetic-limbed, a dancing human toy, the kind once sold at gas stations along forgotten highways. A jointed figurine built for minor entertainment, programmed to move when activated by motion, childlike, innocent. Its surface bore streaks of an unknown sticky substance that smelled faintly of something between sweetener and cleaning fluid. He knelt slowly, knees grinding against the chamber's reinforced flooring. Deliberately, he placed the toy on the ground in front of him, aligned, centered, reverent. Then, without any command, he folded his legs beneath him and sat, not in exhaustion, not in deference, as though participating in a ritual no one else understood. Silence bloomed. The overhead lights dimmed marginally as the containment field adjusted. No one breathed. Even the filtration vents seemed to hesitate, unsure if they were witnessing an emergence or a warning. Up in the command gallery, Valen moved to the forward glass. His boots echoed softly as he stepped closer, gaze fixed not on the soldier, but on the item left before him. Scan the entire vessel, Valen instructed quietly. I want status confirmation on every registered crew member. Location tags, internal log timestamps, last recorded audio, start from 24 hours prior to this docking. A junior analyst glanced at him from her console. Sir, there are no other signatures. He's the only occupant. Debrief protocol. He hasn't spoken. Not a word. No eye movement. No vitals we can verify. He's conscious, just inert. Valen's jaw tightened. Search his ship. There has to be data. Pull everything from the black box. We tried. The entire core's empty. No mission archive. No synaptic shadow trails. Even the boot logs are missing. Valen's voice dropped. Nothing? No mission footprint. It's as though it never launched. Deck didn't blink. He hadn't moved since setting the toy down. The lights above flickered. The toy, without being touched, twitched. Its head rotated 20 degrees. Its arms jerked once. It danced, slow, arrhythmic, like a puppet fighting invisible strings. No sound accompanied the movement. Just plastic legs shuffling, tiny servos pushing against silence. Then it stopped. Deck's expression never changed. "Counselor," a voice called from the tactical bay. "We just recovered one line of corrupted echo from the vessel's outbound signal sweep. Unintelligible, except for 4 words. Valen didn't turn. "Play it." The room froze. A synthesized voice, distorted and crackling, whispered into the chamber. It began with laughter. Valen stared through the reinforced panel. Deck sat motionless, framed in quarantine-grade shielding, bathed in a soft halo of artificial light. The soldier had survived. Alone, without damage the body could show. But the silence was wrong. It was the kind that settled into the bones, not the absence of noise, the presence of something unspoken, something chosen. Valen looked to his adjutant. "Assign observation rotation. Rotate the watch every 90 minutes. If anyone experiences confusion, nausea, or conceptual displacement, pull them immediately." "Sir, what exactly are we guarding against?" Valen stared at the toy. Its limbs were still, but its shadow had shifted. Memory. And from inside the sealed chamber, something clicked once more. The toy's arm rose, and held. "If they infect causality, the treaty collapses itself." The sentence came from strategic analyst Threk Joln. His voice clipped, as if pressing every syllable against the inside of his own skull. His fingers traced outlines on the edge of the command podium, eyes never lifting from the active feeds displayed across the curved laser plasma interface. Each pane glitched intermittently, not from interference, but incompatibility. Earth signals refused to stabilize, contorting rhythm, contradicting sequence. Counselor Kor Valen stood with arms folded behind his back, watching as 39 simultaneous live feeds from Earth blinked, pulsed, and dissolved into dissonance. One showed a gathering of masked humans pretending to duel with oversized foam tools. Another displayed thousands chanting incomprehensible slogans at glowing rectangles. A third looped an old woman holding a lizard dressed in formal wear, speaking to an audience of millions. "Can you find a route pattern?" Valen asked, eyes fixed on a projection where an animal attempted to drive a vehicle through a storefront to acquire caffeinated syrup. "No continuity. The themes regenerate and contradict in the same frame," Joel muttered, dragging his fingertip across a rotating display grid. Attempts to decode the humor structure failed. "We lost 2 behaviorists to recursive semantic burnout. They requested reassignment to anti-narrative detox units." Across the chamber, a containment officer leaned forward, adjusting the relay filters. "We tried disabling Earth's outbound frequency slice. The signal rebuilt itself using nearby satellites, then refracted it through atmospheric advertising systems." Valen's brow creased. "Advertising? Human method of persuasion. Emotional weaponry packaged as commerce. It's contagious." The command chamber, buried deep within the stratolite vault beneath Orion Fold Array, carried the tension of a neural breach. Every surface glowed faintly blue from the backwash of live human culture feeds. Eyes stung, algorithms strained. A distant tone announced the arrival of recon specialist Varen Deck. He entered wearing regulation exoshell without decals. No medals, no insignia. Identity didn't require reinforcement. "Operative Deck," Valen said without preamble. "Mission authority granted. You are assigned to cultural intercept observation, Earth Quadrant 44 Beta. Final surveillance sweep." Deck approached, boots rolling soundlessly across the reinforced flooring. "Objective parameters." Threk Joln gestured toward the rotating data cube, eyes haunted. "Record, extract, interpret, but avoid internalization." Valen interjected, tone as cold as a scalpel. "Do not engage. Maintain full nonverbal detachment. Deep logic scan only. Under no circumstance may you speak to them." Deck's face didn't shift. Linguistic firewall engaged. Emotion anchor installed. Cognitive dampeners primed. "Their transmissions are not passive," Joel added, voice dropping. "Their behavior leaks into reason. Rituals mutate analysis. They've created an entire framework where contradiction is entertainment. They're running irony as an operating system," said a voice near the rear, the comment only half joking. Valen stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is not curiosity, soldier. It's quarantine work. You are not going there to learn. You are going there to resist. If the signal embeds, cut recall. If the broadcast seduces, lock perception. If the experience overwrites logic, remove yourself. Even if that means activating Protocol Gray. Deck gave the faintest nod. Acknowledged. I'll initiate silent drop. Orbital trace deleted post-launch. Already done. Valen confirmed. You leave no trail. Threk stepped forward, holding a sleek strip of neural filament, a personal lock directive, unbreakable even by internal override. If contamination surpasses your threshold, insert this behind the cranial crest. It forces permanent cognitive seal. You won't be able to speak of what you've seen, even under symbiotic interrogation. Deck accepted it wordlessly. The filament glinted once in the sterilized light, then vanished into his gear. The launch sequence engaged in silence. Outside the vault, the descent pod separated from the carrier hull, falling like a scalpel through paper. Deck's pulse remained steady as the cabin rotated, matching Earth's velocity profile. Heads-up displays flickered, recalibrating visual input for Earth's nonlinear event chains. Scans logged movement but could not label it. A floating parade in celebration of National Sock Awareness Day. A wedding conducted entirely on bouncing inflatables. A televised contest wherein participants guessed whether objects were made of dessert. The capsule rocked gently. Deck's fingers paused above the trigger for the cognitive firewall. He opened a channel, not to command, to himself. A single statement. Do not allow me to explain what I see. The lock protocol activated. Neurological seals wrapped memory center access in symbolic compression. No extraction, no playback. A child danced on a rooftop with a bucket of glitter and a boombox, shouting about frogs and prophecy. Deck's eyes narrowed. Earth's orbit welcomed him without resistance. No defense grid, no patrol patterns, just open sky. Below, the terrain stretched in colors that didn't match their own spectrum definitions. Cities pulsated to rhythms based on consumption. Cultures layered atop each other like sediment, fossilized in contradiction. He activated suit dampeners. His voice code erased itself from the transmission log. No signal would leave unless manually triggered. He was no longer an observer. He was a firewall, and the temperature on the outside hull began rising, not from re-entry friction, but from something blooming inside the ship. The onboard AI tried to name it, failed. Deck sat, still and unshaking, while human voices leaked into the capsule. They weren't threatening. They were singing about breakfast items and love, simultaneously. The toy hadn't appeared yet, but the damage had begun. This is not language. It's behavioral architecture without center or ceiling. Verendek whispered the observation as the drop capsule's outer hatch decompressed with a segmented spiral grind. Earth's lower atmosphere poured into the cabin, thick with heat, layered with airborne sugars and powdered proteins. There was a smell, if the term could be stretched that far, a swirl of citrus extract, burned starch, and something that felt like fermented cheer. No shots fired, no sentries, no warning drones, only voices, hundreds. Rising in broken song from just beyond the tree line, he stepped into sunlight that felt staged. The sky had the orange tint of overexposed nostalgia, and the horizon danced under thermal distortion that had nothing to do with climate. His boots sank slightly into grass painted by spilled dyes and brittle food wrappers, each step pressing down small advertisements shaped like cartoon wolves wearing suspenders. Ahead sprawled what Earth authorities called a state fair. Structures of cloth and plastic fluttered like wounded sails, tethered to wagons adorned with hand-lettered promises of funnel cakes, livestock competitions, and psychic healing through salt crystals. Children screamed joyfully in small chariots spinning around mechanical flowers. Adults wore giant foam heads shaped like citrus fruits, shaking their hips to percussive beats reverberating from battery-powered columns disguised as picnic baskets. Deck's internal HUD glitched. The auto-classification system stalled at 2% semantic lock, then failed entirely. Labels flickered, changed color, vanished. The software responsible for categorizing social functions defaulted to error code 44 null. Still, no threat. Still, full immersion. He entered through a gate made of repurposed refrigerator doors, each hand-painted with slogans: beef before dishonor, kiss a goat, heal your soul, free hugs unless you're a lizard. A booth vendor with glitter eyebrows offered him something fried on a wooden stick. Deck declined with a tilt of his head, careful not to speak. The man chuckled, assumed shyness, and yelled over his shoulder, "We got another introvert, Betsy." Deck moved deeper. His heads-up display redrew its interface, reducing inputs to shape recognition alone. No functional logic would hold. Movement tracking detected rhythmic patterns emerging from a tent draped in sequined drapery and fake spider webs. Sounds spilled from inside, discordant vocalizations, followed by gasps, cheers, then soft sobbing. He scanned the entrance. A laminated placard announced the attraction: karaoke for the damned, sing your pain, win a pie. Inside, a small stage surrounded by plastic flowers hosted a man in suspenders, drenched in sweat, clutching a microphone like a relic. His voice cracked through the final lines of a power ballad, voice warbling, face contorting, eyes closed as if invoking something sacred. People stood, motionless. Some cried. Others clutched one another. The words meant little, but the emotional charge spread like static in a confined space. Deck's neural dampeners spiked, signals bounced, empathy clashed with observed irrationality. A loop began. Observation log. Subject emotional response does not align with auditory stimulus. Voice exhibits structural errors. Melody deviates from known scale. Group resonance persists regardless. Hypothesis. Collective delusion or self-directed catharsis. Loop. The man dropped the microphone. Audience erupted. No score was tallied. No contest declared. He stepped down as if returning from war. From his left, a child, perhaps 7, approached silently, cradling an object. Yellow, plastic, anthropomorphic. The toy, small limbs, springs coiled in its torso. A loose bolt clicked as the child walked. No words, just solemn eyes impossibly steady. The boy extended the gift upward. Protocol dictated refusal of direct transfer. But the child's hand did not shake. His face held none of Earth's usual emotional leaks. The stare conveyed not innocence, but necessity. Deck reached out. Contact made. The toy activated. Not just movement, not just noise. It synchronized. Small limbs rotated in perfect alignment with a muffled tune playing in the background, something involving a horse and heartbreak. The figure bounced, spun once, and emitted a synthesized squeak tuned to mimic avian distress. His HUD caught a surge in bioelectric resonance not his own. Something foreign had entered the ambient frequencies. Deck froze. His left hand began to tingle. Neural input stuttered. The toy, still dancing, vibrated harder. Tiny red LEDs blinking like emergency strobes in the shape of cartoon eyes. He moved away, fast, but the damage had begun. Inside the main event dome, another performer took the stage, this time an elderly man clutching a tambourine. The lyrics he chose were incomprehensible, yet the crowd swayed as one, mouths open, harmony off-key, but unified. Behind them, a projection screen displayed a montage of human infants, laughing at animals slipping on wet surfaces. The images looped. The laughter intensified. Deck's internal firewall hissed. Recursive logic detection initialized. He activated fallback cognitive detachment. Final entry log 003 vertical bar. Recursive pattern formation, escalating beyond containment. Identity context degrading. Symbol overload detected. Locking auxiliary empathy subroutines. Initiating dissociation tier 4. Codename, lantern fade. The crowd sang louder. Someone tossed him a hot dog wrapped in foil shaped like a crown. He clutched the toy, now still, and walked toward the echoing music, mind folding in on itself, mapping rituals that refused to obey pattern, grasping meaning where logic could not hold. The fair pulsed behind him, and somewhere inside that warbled chaos, Earth exhaled again. Beacon's gone. There's something else in its place. Varen Deck's internal mission interface projected the coordinates in his peripheral field, a pulsing green marker where the extraction site should have been. But instead of the cloaked-up link device buried beneath neutral ground, he found a ring of neon-lit poles and a flashing sign. Welcome to the Groove Patch. Artificial turf covered the clearing. Inflatable mascots bounced lazily in rhythm with a beat bleeding from distant speakers. A swarm of children circled a food stall carved from a van, chanting lyrics about dinosaurs eating pancakes. Beyond the circle, humans in sequined vests formed concentric lines, feet stomping in sync on pressure-sensitive panels that triggered glitter explosions from hidden cannons. He scanned the terrain. The beacon's quantum signal was offline, overwritten by a broadcast loop coded as party mode, eternal. Interference flooded his comms channel, jamming fallback protocol triggers. Even his internal power monitor began singing. Deck stepped forward cautiously, boots pressing into synthetic ground that released a perfume of caramel and wet grass. The toy in his hand twitched as it neared a speaker mounted in a flamingo's mouth. It synced instantly. Music changed. Bass thickened. The plastic mascot blinked twice, then began moving, not random gestures, but choreographed patterns that matched the dancers around him. The figure's arms rotated to tempo. Its feet kicked in tandem with the beat. Behind him, a man wearing goggles and feathers shouted, "Join the MASH relay, spaceman." Before Deck could retreat, a tray was shoved toward his chest. On it, mashed starches molded into animal shapes wobbled beside a basket of live birds wearing paper crowns. A timer buzzed, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of yells, claps, and gasps. Someone dumped cranberry jelly on his shoulder and screamed, "May the gravy gods bless your courage." Deck spun, disoriented, attempting to initiate a defensive withdrawal. Muscles refused command. Neural lag struck mid-movement. Sensory overflow stalled the connection between thought and action. AI log entry, cognitive feedback saturation, emotion loop initiated, trigger chain, amusement disruption, empathy, symbolic hijack, suggested action, cold sync reboot, unavailable. His breath caught as involuntary laughter erupted from a circle of observers watching a man juggle pineapples while standing on a unicycle made of barbecue utensils. Laughter was uncontainable. It folded logic into irrelevance. It made failure sound like participation. Varen attempted to override the motor lag, but his suit systems were now interpreting commands through translated Earth idioms. A display flashed in bold orange letters, "Don't rock the roller coaster, buddy." He stumbled backward and dropped the toy. It landed upright, immediately sinking to the speaker embedded in a giant animatronic corn cob. A warped remix erupted, part lullaby, part battle anthem, undercut with what sounded like ducks whispering threats. The toy began spinning. Varen blacked out. When awareness returned, his back rested against a tree wrapped in glowing hula hoops. Feet bare, boots missing. He flexed his toes and grimaced at the sensation of jelly coating his soles. The translator clicked to life. A soothing voice said, "Hey champ, why the long spaceship ride?" He tried to respond. The only sound he could form was, "Samesies." Static rippled behind his vision. Every attempt to articulate meaning triggered idioms. Definitions inverted. Syntax restructured itself into punchlines. A man in a chicken suit approached, wings spread, beak tilted like a priest before baptism. "You're one of us now," he said solemnly, as confetti drifted down from a nearby helium cannon. Varen's limbs refused conflict. He couldn't summon outrage, couldn't form the concept of protest. A small hand slipped into his. A child again. Not the same one. Different eyes. Same silence. She offered him a sticker that read, "You tried," in rainbow text. He stuck it to his chest plate without knowing why. In the background, the toy launched into a synchronized headspin. He watched. Something in his mind, something that remembered containment, classification, caution, cracked like sugar under weight. He could still see the sky, but it no longer meant the same thing. "Sir, there's someone in docking bay 7. But no ship entered." The technician's voice came across the channel like a dropped whisper caught mid-thought. Counselor Cor Valden, seated inside Central Tactical Review, turned slowly toward the alert. The heads-up displays on the command tier rippled into live feed. Dock 7's security array, motionless until now, blinked active with a single figure at its center. No entry logs, no arrival signature, no propulsion trails. Varen Deck had reappeared, unaccompanied, unannounced, and holding something. The broadcast field sharpened. Varen's posture resembled meditation more than exhaustion. His hands rested gently on his knees, and between them sat the human toy, familiar, intact, unnervingly clean. The same object from pre-infiltration footage, now perched upright, motionless. Its synthetic eyes reflected the glow of containment, shielding like twin beads of corrupted starlight. Valden rose from his station. "Lock the chamber. Don't approach. I want full analysis before a word is spoken." "Vital scan reads normal," one of the analysts murmured, confused. "Heart rate within threshold. Oxygenation stable. Neurological rhythms symmetrical." "Any indicators of neural degradation?" Valden asked. The technician's brow tightened. "None, which doesn't make sense. They descended to the debrief chamber slowly, accompanied by 2 observers and behavioral analyst Threk Joln, who carried a cognitive prism designed for passive resonance mapping of memory sequences. The moment the group entered, the air thickened, not from temperature, but from stillness. Time here felt compressed. Deck didn't rise, didn't blink, didn't flinch. He sat like silence made flesh, as if speaking might collapse the room. Joln broke protocol. I'm not here to interrogate. I only want to understand. He positioned the prism carefully on the platform between them. The unit activated with a low flicker, throwing a cascade of script across its display, a non-verbal transcript of thought wave patterns. The symbols began rendering immediately. One line, again, and again, overlaid, etched, imprinted like a scar. It made sense to them. Joln stared. The statement repeated itself not just in order, but in variance. Emotion, color spectrum, subharmonic variance, all identical. The meaning had embedded itself into Deck's cognitive architecture as the only remaining constant. He stepped back, expression paling. This isn't recall. This is imprinting. Like the phrase is holding his identity together. Veldon narrowed his gaze. Try filtering it. See what it's shielding. I did, Joln murmured, voice slipping. There's nothing beneath it. The toy shifted. No trigger. No motion cue. No external prompt. Its head rotated. One eye flickered with chromatic bleed. Then the dancing began. Slow at first, limbs clicking through their programmed range, but with rising rhythm, as though it weren't simply performing but translating. The joints snapped with mechanical cheer, but every rotation landed with unnatural precision. It wasn't mimicking Earth's absurdity. It was repeating a message the Council couldn't decode. Joln's legs buckled. He gripped the wall, shivering. Behind him, another counselor stumbled against a railing, murmuring, "It's interpreting us." A third blinked furiously, unable to focus, tears forming without emotion. "I know that song," he whispered, "but I've never heard it." The fourth dropped his datapad and gripped his chest like gravity had thickened. The fifth leaned against the glass and slid to the floor. Metal alerts chirped on every deck. Sedation protocols auto-triggered. Emergency nanomedics entered without needing instructions. Joln remained standing, barely, clenching his fists, teeth clenched against the instinct to speak. Veldon didn't move. He stood before Deck, watching the toy as it finished its dance, and slowly bowed, one arm outstretched, like it awaited applause. The room was quiet again, and then Deck blinked. Once, just once. Veldon spoke softly, more to himself than anyone. "What did you see?" No reply. The toy's limb jerked, one last movement, and froze mid-gesture, not like a malfunction, like punctuation. Joln steadied his breath. "He isn't broken." "No," Veldon agreed. "He's aligned." Outside, containment doors sealed. Inside, nothing moved. The silence wasn't waiting. It was knowing. This isn't madness. It's design, and we're not built to survive it. Threk Jolon's voice didn't rise. It fractured. The words came out flat, emptied of defiance. His pupils trembled as the interface cast data fractals across his face, looping glyphs and linguistic distortions spinning like shrapnel through reason. Inside the central debrief vault, every head turned toward the central laser plasma column, where the analysis report unspooled, frame by frame, rhythm by rhythm, contradiction by contradiction. The language module choked. Syntax trees split into recursive stumps. Logic models rejected their own premises mid-render. Varen Deck sat motionless in the chamber below. The toy, placed precisely at his feet, hadn't moved since the last incident. Its silence now felt heavier than noise. Counselor Kor Valen stood beside the display with his hands clenched behind his back, saying nothing. Jolon advanced a frame. The logs shimmered again, then froze. 3 identical emotional signatures layered over a civilian Earth broadcast. A woman sobbing over spilled soup, a dog dressed as a wizard, and a man attempting to rap through a kazoo during a funeral. Each event generated pattern fatigue. Each loop triggered semantic saturation. Neural simulations ran out of parsing threads before minute 4. He tapped the display. This is what he saw. A moment of nothing. Then the playback resumed. Earthly celebration footage, grainy, shaking, chaotically edited. Someone off-screen yelled, "Yee-haw," before a piñata exploded into spaghetti. Background audio included what sounded like a child preaching about taxes through auto-tune. Jolon flinched. He paused the feed again, and spoke without facing the others. He wasn't attacked. He was overridden. He gestured toward the core of the analysis. Every perception filter failed. Human behavior doesn't break our logic. It ignores the need for one. Their structure isn't chaotic. It's recursive paradoxism. They build meaning through self-negation and layered irony. Their joy contradicts context. Their sorrow has punchlines. Their reverence is comedic. They orbit contradiction like it's gravity. The room didn't react. It absorbed. Jolan turned, eyeing the council. We always classified emotional saturation as a threat only when amplified by trauma or extremity. We were wrong. They weaponized ordinary absurdity. Valen's gaze drifted toward the screen, and Varen locked himself inside the last line of thought he could hold on to. That phrase, it made sense to them, wasn't just reflection. It became his firewall. A single sentence holding back total collapse. The toy shivered. No motion trigger. No atmospheric change, just vibration through stillness, like a wire straining in silence. Then, audio. The voice that emerged was a filtered patchwork of Earth's cultural emissions, half nursery rhyme, half infomercial, layered over whale song, and what might have been the theme to a retro cooking competition. Jolan's knees buckled. He staggered, bracing himself against the console. That isn't playback. It's selection. It's choosing. That toy, whatever it is, it's mimicking their method. Fragments without foundation, meaning through contradiction. Valen stepped forward, stopped the transmission, locked the object under stasis until further notice. No containment will hold it, Jolan replied without turning. Not physically, not cognitively. You'd need to filter your own reactions to its presence, and we don't have protocols for non-directed symbolic loops. An emergency advisor, stationed on the lower deck, raised a trembling hand. What happens if exposure spreads? It doesn't spread like a virus, Jolan answered. It spreads like a joke that never ends. No one laughed. Valen exhaled. Mark Earth as MRE status. Code Black classification. Mimetic risk environment. The council chamber darkened slightly as external nodes registered the declaration. A digital perimeter formed across the border sectors, not to repel attack, but to avoid understanding. Another notification bloomed in red across the overhead heads-up panels. Scout probe, Sector Theta 9, vertical bar, signal detected. Valden turned. Source, unregistered frequency, audio-based, non-hostile but non-decipherable. What's it transmitting? The technician stared at the stream, mouth slightly ajar. A remix. It's music, I think. There's livestock sounds layered under motivational quotes, and someone saying "Bless your breakfast, soldier." Jolan stepped away from the console and walked to the glass. They're not reaching out. Valen frowned. Then what are they doing? Echoing. The toy, still seated at Varen's feet, blinked both eyes. Once, the room dropped into stillness. None of them could hear it anymore, but they all knew the signal had begun. Seal the vault. Do it now. Containment Officer Vernex barked the order across the security relay before the technician had even touched the glass. But the sound had already triggered. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The toy's speaker emitted a sound wave composed of overlapping fragments, Earth language residue, reversed infomercial slogans, and harmonic chimes tuned just off the standard galactic auditory map. Intern Halric Oren was the first to fall. He'd only leaned a bit too close. The playback initiated from the device, not through command or pressure, but reaction, as if it had sensed his curiosity, as if curiosity itself was the trigger. The sound struck him with no visible force, yet he staggered backward like the air had folded. His hands clutched his ears. His mouth formed a question, then surrendered to an emotion that didn't fit any listed taxonomy. "I feel seen," he whispered, before slumping to the floor with a smile stretched far too wide to be safe. In the viewing room above, Vernex turned toward the diagnostics operator. "Shut down the feed." "I can't," she stammered, tapping furiously at the console. "It's not a broadcast. It's being perceived. The system can't locate a source because it doesn't transmit. It emerges." Analyst Threk Jolan entered through the rear security portal, his coat soaked from some unknown spill in the hallway, his hands trembling but empty. "It isn't a device," he said. "We tried treating it like one, but the AI's final analysis is clear. That object is not technology. It's a format." Vernex stepped closer, voice tight. "What does that mean?" Jolan held up a data slate, shaky fingers scrolling through diagnostic layers. A format doesn't need substance, it's an arrangement of recognition. You can't quarantine an arrangement. It reshapes the observer, not the room. The toy moved again. It didn't dance, it nodded. A tiny deliberate tilt of the head. Verendek, who hadn't shown expression in weeks, allowed the corner of his mouth to lift, subtle, unsettling, absolute. Get the object out of the room, Ver ordered. Use magnetic grip, don't touch it directly. Isolate and destroy. Already tried, the technician said, swallowing hard. Level 5 incinerator ran for 7 minutes. It survived. Reassembled itself using leftover meal packets from the break station. Valden's voice broke through the overhead comms. Then move it off planet. Secure launch immediately. No one interacts. No one listens. Move. They didn't get the chance. Across the research level, security logs lit up as requests began flooding the internal network. Not security breaches, not sabotage attempts, content requisitions. Personnel were demanding access to archived Earth data, streaming past files marked human entertainment, unclassified, jokes, recipes, game shows involving deception and marshmallows. Dozens of workers filed forms requesting private viewings of human behavior, citing personal reflection and anthropological curiosity. What is this? Ver muttered, jaw clenched. Jolin didn't answer. He just looked at the toy, which now turned slowly to face the exit corridor, as though it anticipated an audience. The emergency fallback trigger engaged. Across the station, auto notification fired under protocol code Delta Vermin. Cease all exposure. Do not engage any signal or structure containing Earth origin. Full lockdown authorized. But the Echo had already seeded. Up in observation deck 9, an analyst gripped the side of her monitor, eyes wide. We've picked up something inbound. Ver turned toward the wall interface. Origin, human vessel, tiny, civilian class. Broadcasting unencrypted. Destroy it. No weapons, no shields, no crew, just audio on repeat. The transmission played, low fidelity, warm bassline, then the voice grinning, proud, unapologetic. This one's for Big Dave. The feed stuttered once, then cleared, revealing a hand-drawn logo rotating slowly against a psychedelic backdrop. A dog wearing sunglasses played a ukulele while surrounded by floating text bubbles shouting recipes. Valden's voice returned on the comm. What are we hearing? Jolin didn't blink. Cultural detonation. The toy raised its left arm and waved. You're sure he requested this session? Counselor Cor Valden didn't lift his eyes from the heads-up transcript burning softly across the debrief hall's curved projection wall. He stood beside the tribunal arch, one hand gripped behind his back, the other resting on a cold ceramic cup he hadn't touched since arrival. Around him, 12 high-function administrators sat in reinforced seats arranged in a crescent arc. One chair remained conspicuously empty, its former occupant still under sedation after the previous week's exposure. Containment Officer Vernex nodded once. He asked to speak. Didn't insist. Just waited. Valden inhaled slowly through his nose, and the toy, still functional, still following. The chamber's northern gate opened. Verendek entered without escort. His steps echoed sharp across the obsidian-tiled floor, though he made no attempt to dramatize them. His expression revealed nothing, neither calm nor contempt. Draped across his arm, like a casual accessory, hung the plastic toy, its head tilted to one side, eyes dormant, limbs slack. He didn't wait for permission. He stopped 6 paces from the central circle and placed the object upright, facing the council. A long breath passed through the room. Not one of tension, but preparation. Most here had already read the findings, reviewed the neuromimetic logs, and cross-verified the AI conclusion that still lived on every sealed channel in blinking red. Pattern collapse, irreversible. Varen looked up, his voice steady, low, each word weighted. They're not primitive. He raised his chin slightly. They're post-logical. His hands dropped to his sides. We're doomed. He stepped back, said nothing else. Behind him, the toy's servo whined. It rotated. Then music. The melody sputtered, then found footing. A low twang rolled beneath static, paired with the drawn-out call of marine mammals, layered over a beat that seemed composed of laughter and soft chewing. Lyrics emerged, distorted, yet unmistakably taken from something human. It was Achy Breaky Heart, played backward, sung in 5 overlapping tones, each in a different emotional register. Counselor Niall Suvrak, the youngest present, whispered, "That's not a song, that's a map." The next movement was unplanned. Director Hal Vaughan, seated nearest the platform, stood up too fast. He stumbled. His eyes brimmed. Then, without removing his credentials, he unpinned the council seal from his collar and placed it gently on the nearest console. "I resign," he said, voice shaking. "Effective now. I'm relocating to a station without atmospheres or vowels." He walked out unchallenged. 3 others sat without moving, eyes fixed on the toy as it began a slow sway from side to side, mimicking the rhythm of something Varen never mentioned, but every one of them suddenly remembered. Counselor Ren Merrick leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fingertips pressed to his temples. "We tried to classify the threat, map its structure. That was our error." Threk Joln appeared behind the glass, watching from the upper deck. He didn't speak. His hands gripped the railing like an anchor. The chair at the center pulsed with authorization light. Vailden stepped toward the console and keyed in the override sequence. "Seal all reports. Mark the following under Intergalactic Suppression Code 7-fold. Culturally weaponized, pattern dissonant, mimetic recursive threat." He turned toward the chamber. "The Council will release no statement. Earth's quadrant is off limits. No vessel, scout or research team will approach. All exposure material is quarantined. Request for cultural translation will be denied by default." No objection followed. Varen's eyes never moved from the toy. Vailden finally addressed him directly. "Is there anything else you want?" The room braced for command, confession, or epiphany. Instead, Deck blinked once and said, almost softly, "Let me watch." A beat passed. "Don't stop the feed." Someone laughed, then choked on it. Vailden didn't react. Why? Deck didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the toy, now swaying with increasing momentum, began to replay a montage, flickering cuts of Earth broadcasts, a man slipping on whipped cream beside a Statue of Liberty piñata, 2 elderly women arguing about the moon landing while baking meatloaf, a slow-motion high-five between a dog and a toddler. The images bled together. The room darkened, not because the lights failed, but because no one wanted to see anymore. Yet none of them looked away, not one. Behind the glass, Joln whispered to himself, "They're not trying to be understood, they're making understanding optional." And outside the council chamber, far beyond the orbital shield, the satellite in Theta 9 blinked. It had received another file. The subject line read, "This one's for Big Dave Remix 2. Transmission, open." This isn't a vessel. It's a declaration in karaoke form. The words were recorded in the final transmission of Scout Rendre, logged under Unauthorized Exploration Report 7D Theta 9. His voice carried the forced composure of someone who just discovered an impossibility and was trying not to laugh at the implications. On screen, the heads-up replay showed a drift pod floating near the rim of a cold star system. No propulsion signatures, no active shields, no distress flag. Inside the translucent frame floated supplies that defied logic: vacuum-sealed snack cakes, glow-in-the-dark hats, an unplugged karaoke machine, powered by what appeared to be citrus batteries, and a handwritten note attached to a roll of duct tape reading, "Free to a good chaos." The feed cut to static, then resumed. Audio intact, pilot not present, possibly ejected or disassembled, Ren muttered, voice dry. Contents suggest cultural export rather than rescue. No formal message, unless you count a mixtape composed of bagpipes and goat impressions. In the council's observation chamber, the playback terminated, not by command. The file simply ended, as if the device decided it had conveyed enough. The silence that followed wasn't anticipatory, it was acknowledgement. Varen Deck, still confined beneath Tier Null observation, stood without order. He approached the room's curved viewport. The toy at his feet chirped a rhythm, bobbing side to side with the serenity of a child, unaware it's at war with meaning. Valen entered. No guards, no observers. He simply walked in, stood beside the man who refused to speak for weeks, and asked quietly, "Do you still want to watch?" Varen didn't turn, always. Outside the station, containment satellites reoriented around Earth's quadrant. A planetary-scale cognitive shield activated, designed not to block matter, but recognition. Incoming vectors would forget what they were seeking. Navigation data would erase routes in real time. Even memory backups would dissolve mid-thought if they attempted to map human presence. And yet, 7 fringe systems had already received the broadcast, not intentionally, not from Earth. The ripple had spread through personal devices, cultural sampling loops, lost scouts. In one case, a rogue gardening drone began reciting punchlines about penguins and root vegetables. Jolan was the first to name the infection accurately. They're not exporting culture, they're letting it ferment in the cracks. On Varen's final psyche report, declassified for internal use only, he wrote a single paragraph before the page locked permanently. The threat was never their weapons, it was their indifference to logic. They didn't try to convert us, they just existed, and that was enough. A week later, 2 council assistants were found reciting lyrics from a human advertisement for portable foot spas. Neither had visited Earth, neither remembered hearing it before. The broadcast frequency was traced to a probe lost 3 cycles prior, its onboard AI now dedicated entirely to mimicking human vlogs about kitchen disasters and motivational balloon animals. Earth hadn't escalated, it hadn't sent fleets, it hadn't deployed propaganda, it had simply leaked. The council gathered one final time, no banners, no formality, just tired voices in a sealed chamber, trying to outvote inevitability. Valen stood last, eyes hollow, shoulders still squared. We lost no territory, he said, no ships, no blood, but something larger was taken. A pause. He pressed the lock seal on the chamber door. We lost the ability to call them inferior. On board the observation deck, Varen sat cross-legged in front of the heads-up array, the toy resting in his lap. It now wore a sticker reading, Certified Earth Vibe. No one had placed it there. He watched the replay loop of the drift pod again. The snacks floated, the machine flickered. The speaker emitted a cow's moo edited into techno, and Varen smiled, an expression that felt more like surrender than joy. The toy began to dance. The council went quiet. The galaxy adjusted its posture, and Earth kept singing.